And welcome to this special town council meeting, or forum, I should say. Before we start, I'd like to ask Councilor Boncory to lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. A moment of silence for two reasons. The first one being Mary Kelly, who was on the Conservation Commission for over 45 years and taught in the Winthrop school system for, I believe, roughly 30, passed away suddenly this past week. That's the first thing I'd like us to remember. And also, this is the anniversary of 17 years ago of the day that this America will never forget. Let's just take a few minutes. Thank you. So why are we here this evening? In 2016, there was a referendum question, the marijuana ballot question. It was November of 2016. It passed in Winthrop, which means there's an opportunity to open pot shops in town. Last year, the town council, on October 17th, put a moratorium on any further work regarding whether we open pot shops or we don't, whether we consider them or not. A complete moratorium until the end of 2018. Well, that's only 4 months away. And the town needs to make a decision. We need to plan, and that's the reason we're here tonight. We're here to hear comments from the general public, good or bad, whether we proceed or what the alternatives are. So that's the reason we're here. To kind of set the stage for you, I'm going to call on our town manager, Austin Faison, to make a slight presentation. Austin?
Good evening, everyone. Austin Faison, new town manager. Pleasure to be here. I wanted to run through a few of the things that come with opening up a recreational marijuana facility. In Brookline, where I came from, we went through this entire process. We changed zoning in our annual town meeting earlier this year. There was a medicinal facility that was looking to convert to a recreational facility. All of their application is done with the state as of right now, and Brookline is currently reviewing their application, and that place should be up and running within the next couple of months. So it's an example of Brookline and Framingham and Leicester and a few other communities are far ahead of this game in terms of setting up their local licensing as well as making host community agreements and things like that. So really, we're at a crossroads now in Winthrop, and the necessity for this public forum is really for the community to help the council decide on a next course of action. On the one hand, because it was such a close vote, if the community sees fit, there can be a pursuit of a outright ban on marijuana, recreational retailers, testing facilities, those types of things. What would have to happen to facilitate that would be a signature drive, then that would get the item on the ballot for the public to vote on, and then the town council would actually have to vote to ban it as well. So you'd have twice have to get bans voted on between the different kind of governmental bodies within town. That said, if we are not going that route, what is most imperative is for the town to move forward concerning zoning and potential locations of a recreational marijuana retailer. We have a moratorium in place that ends on December 31st of this year. There is going to be limited extensions of those moratoriums. And from my perspective, the Attorney General's office is only going to offer an extension of the moratorium if we have the signatures in place through a voter-led signature drive, and it is scheduled to be on the ballot at the next major election, or even calling a special election for it. If those things aren't lined up, we will not get an extension. And what that leads to is a potential industrious investor that wants to open up shop in town, seeking to open shop without local zoning, seeing over their location and dictating those things, because with the recreational law that passed, most of the regulation happened at the state level. There's very little local control compared with the medicinal. So most of the ways that you can slow down the process are not apparent. So Winthrop could potentially open itself up to a lawsuit, and I don't think anyone in town would like that to happen. So that said, if we are, after tonight, making the decision to not pursue the no route, we will have to move with due haste to have planning in place by December 31st of this year. We would be in the position to dictate where these happen. It is a ratio of package store licenses compared to retail licenses. That's the upper limit, unless the ban was put in place, because there's only 5. And then beyond that, what we would have local control over is we would have to adopt the local option tax, similar to the hotel and meals in type of tax. That would have to come through the town council. The town council would also, with anyone who came into town who wanted to open up a shop, one of their initial things that they need to do in their licensing process with the state is have a host community agreement in place with the host community. That would be our first opportunity to develop an income stream that has specific uses towards it. We would use that towards marijuana education. A health department would use that. Our police department would use it towards enforcement. But it's a host community agreement that is detailed by the impacts to the local community of that new product or substance being allowed in that community. That would be the first chance to have a public forum with anyone who came to town. Their process with the state can't move on from there. What we would have to do after that is we would have to set up a special permitting process for this new type of retailer, in which we would have essentially department heads would be able to report on the special permit zoning, so that we would have reports from all of the departments impacted by it, so that in the event that they were to get a special permit, it could go to the town council, and the town council would then be able to go over all of the reports and the special permit and have an additional public hearing concerning it. So there would be multiple times, if there was a retailer here, for the public to speak with that retailer and get a sense of what their shop would look like and things like that, and what they see as the impacts. But like I was saying, there's really 2 roads to go down here. If we go the no route, we need to kind of make the decision quickly, and if we're going the yes route, we need to get planning in place. My perspective, I could care less either way. I'm always looking for new revenue streams for the town. This is a gray market that is kind of unknown. It seems in most states around the country that have passed it, initially the rollout is the market is constrained by the supply, not the demand of it. You have cannabis-related tourism and things like that, which would happen here because there aren't closed states that have similar regulations in place. But we don't really know how many people are using the substance or what type of revenues could come in. So with no local medicinal facility or anything like that, we would really have little insight into the amount of money that the town could take in from this process. So I look forward to the discussion, and I can provide more information if people have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. we're going to have questions and answers or an opportunity for everybody to comment. When we get to that point in the program, there are microphones down on either end. We ask you to come down and state your name and your precinct, and you're allowed to speak, ask a question. Hopefully we can answer it. But before we do that, we're going to have any member of the council like to make a statement. Nick, 1 second, because there's one person ahead of you, okay? Linda Calla, who's chair of the Safety Committee, Public Safety Committee, would like to make a statement.
So I just wanted to mention how this forum evolved and how we got to this point. The Public Health and Safety Committee, which is comprised of Councilor Pete Christopher and Councilor Nick Loconte and myself, we held a meeting on July 12th, and the first topic on the discussion was the legalization of marijuana. As a council president referred to, on October 17th, the council voted unanimously to adopt a temporary moratorium which stated no retail recreational marijuana sales location be allowed to obtain any permits/licenses to open in town until 12/31/18. As that date is approaching, the Public Health and Safety Committee felt it was very important to open up lines of communication. The committee voted to recommend the town council hold a joint public forum, which we had hoped would include members of the planning board and a representative of the Cannabis Control Commission, which I understand that was not possible at this point. It was suggested the meeting be held at the Winthrop High School auditorium no later than the middle of September, and here we are. The committee felt this was a good time to find out if the residents/voters want to approve a retail establishment or don't want to approve one, and what the regulations/restrictions would look like if a retail store was approved. Time is of the essence, as our town manager just mentioned, and the consensus is to prepare for a special election to decide which way to go. According to the clerk's office, that process would take approximately 6 weeks, which would bring us into November. Chief Delahanty and Assistant Town Manager Joe Domilovitz were doing research, reaching out to other communities, speaking to the Attorney General's office, the Planning Board, and Koppelman and Page, our legal counsel, to find out, first of all, who's responsible to draft the regulations and restrictions that would need to be put in place to guide the town through zoning, licensing, adopting a bylaw, location, buffer zone to protect near schools and daycares, and trying to confirm if parks would also be included. So this is now where we've come. We've come to this point, and we're hoping that if you have any questions and concerns that you'll speak up tonight, and we'll do our best to try to figure out how to get the answers back to you and our next step. Thank you.
Councilor Loconte.
Thank you, Council President. Hello, everybody. So here we are, and I think that we have to kind of acknowledge that there are pros and cons to this, like there are with any situation. And as we kind of examine more deeply those pros and cons, I think it's really important to kind of connect the dots to the financial picture that Winthrop is in right now. And we're in some real challenging financial times right now. The truth is we just don't have a lot of sources of revenue beyond property taxes. And I know that I myself feel that property taxes are already too high. My mortgage has gone up more than $100 in the last year just to pay for more taxes. And we need to start getting creative if we're going to find new sources of revenue to pay for things like paving roads and reducing class size, paying for more opioid addiction coaches. And this is one way that we can do this. It's not just the property taxes that we would get from any cannabis establishment that comes to town, but Winthrop is also empowered to collect up to 3% sales tax on each and every purchase at this store, which could end up being a lot of money and a way that we can avoid future property tax increases. No one, to kind of get to the cons, no one wants big green neon marijuana leaves in town for signs. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about sort of doing this in a classy way, establishing regulations that could be done to sort of not have this stand out, not look like we're in the combat zone. That's not what's on the table here. I don't know if anyone else has been to a recreational store in places like Colorado or Alaska before. I know I have, and it's not anything like that, sort of what sort of can be commonly thought could be. And I sort of also kind of fall back on, I just sort of don't see how someone could see this to be any worse than a liquor store in town. I mean, what's the difference here? If we're going to prohibit pot shops, what are we doing allowing liquor stores to stay in town? So that's some of my thinking going in on pros and cons, and well, I'm interested to hear your thoughts too. Thank you.
Anyone else from the council? At this time, I'll open it up for comments. Please.
Good evening. My name is Dottie DOnofrio. I'm from Precinct 4. I come before you tonight in opposition to Winthrop hosting or housing a marijuana dispensary and/or store. My main reason is around the concerns of our youth and our neighborhoods. Some would raise the comparison. What's the difference about drinking versus pot? Liquor sales to minors. Someone is of age, goes into a package store, and purchases said liquor, beer for the minors. There is no control. We have several liquor stores right here in town wherein this can and does take place. Underage youth or underage folks cannot be served liquor in a local eatery or a private club here in Winthrop because there is control. There is a control factor in the establishment via a bartender or a waitstaff person to monitor said ordering of liquor, coupled with good parenting lessons hands-on. Some bring forth the money factor, revenue for the town. In our April 2018 town budget open meeting, our chief financial officer, Mr. Perez, reported that it would have to be several hundred thousands of dollars in sales for the town to realize any substantial fiscal revenue return. Would the town have to step up law enforcement, manpower, a benefit employee, and new hires? We learned at the recent MWRA open meeting, the evening shifts both here in Winthrop and in Revere, our dispatchers and responders are low in manpower. And the example set forth was that if there was a call to action in another part of the town, we would have little to no backup available. My question also is, what is the lawful legal means to test a driver high on marijuana? And does the Winthrop Police Department have the capability for testing and discovering and identifying violations? Medically, many would argue that marijuana oils, herbs, food items, etc. ease pain. In checking with the Beth Israel Deaconess Pain Center, it offers that taking of marijuana has not been proven to an improved medical state or condition reliever. The marijuana goes into the bloodstream and affects the brain, altering the person's overall functioning up to 4 to 6 hours. It is medically known that there are 2 available vitamins that affect and give relief to the body. These are, I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, benfotiamine, and it's a special form of vitamin B1, and methylcholamine, a special form of vitamin B12. They don't have altering effects on the brain. They do affect the body's pain. Back when CASA hosted their awards night, I submitted a full packet around national documentation on the effects of marijuana and the developing brain of our youth, up to and including the ages of 24 to 25. The reporting factors were not good. Today, those seeking to purchase marijuana for pain or recreational use can do so through product offerings on many now of the new websites, and having said product delivered directly to their homes. Also, there are also a few medical marijuana approved shops for card holders to make purchases. Yes, there are a few doctors who do subscribe to medical marijuana. The leading hospitals here in Massachusetts do not support marijuana as a medical means at this time, for there's no real documentation around the long-term good effects. I sincerely ask you, the town of Winthrop elected officials, representatives of the people, to reject in its entirety a shop, a store, a facility wanting to sell recreational medical marijuana here in Winthrop. We have a population of around 20,000 folks. We've come to this town to respect, to enjoy the warmth of living in a little seaside bedroom community, and the cosmopolitan push is poor at best, and I thank you.
Hi. Before you start, sir, just to respond to a couple of the questions that you had, because I kind of think this is a question and answer type of forum, and we don't just want open-ended questions for the entire time. First off, medicinal. We're not looking for a medicinal facility, and we're not looking for the medicinal benefits. This is a recreational substance, nothing different than alcohol is the way that it'd be regulated. The original bill that people voted on was actually a bill to enforce marijuana similar to alcohol and tobacco. So first off, medicinal. We're not talking about the medicinal effects at this point. Second of all, you talked about the nature of enforcement for the police department. So I've worked with a bunch of chiefs on this. The enforcement of marijuana already as an illicit market is difficult at best. The way that it's been decriminalized, it's very hard for police officers already with no recreational facilities open to enforce. So it's a difficult question to ask of how would a police department enforce if a recreational facility was open when there's no clear standards on how they enforce right now. So it's a hard, slippery slope to go down when you talk about police enforcement concerning the substance. In Brookline, for example, the only way we were changing enforcement with our police department was local smoking regulations in terms of smoking in parks or in proximity to buildings. That was really the only way we can ding people on it. So it remains hard if you have a recreational place or not. In terms of the purchase and sale, right now we're only looking at recreational facilities or a lab testing place or something like that. Social consumption is not regulated by the state right now and isn't on the table. The state has no regulations in place for that. So it's not going to be similar to a bar that kids could go into and smoke in or anything like that. It would be a place where a license would be scanned, similar to a liquor store. I think a liquor store is the best comparison that you could use to a marijuana facility right now. And the marijuana facilities that are already open in the state are the most regulated businesses that we have in place. So it's similar to going to an Apple store, but you have to show your ID to get into the Apple store, and instead of buying a phone or a computer, you're buying marijuana. Not to be kind of making fun of it type of thing, but these places are super regulated. And then in terms of the impact to the local community, that's what we're looking for the host community fee. That's the 3% that we could get through a host community agreement. That's specifically what would be negotiated in that, is we are looking for ways to pay for the youth education and to help our police department enforce. No one's even bringing up fire, but the process of making oils now involves butane, and it can be highly flammable, and people are trying to make these things at home. This is dangerous stuff that people are dealing with, and there's multiple ways that it does impact the community, but that is the intent of the host community fee. There would be a local license for 3%, and in the event that we negotiate a host community agreement, it would most likely be another 3% that would be just going towards kind of education efforts and things like that. So not to kind of dissuade anyone with the questions that you put out there, but I wanted to make sure I hit as many of them as I could. Thank you.
My name is Guy Brandestein. We're Precinct 6, and I've got questions for you. The gentleman that compared marijuana shop to a liquor store and buying marijuana to buying liquor. Turn the volume up on this thing. Quick question for you. If I were holding a glass of cognac in my hand right now, could you smell it?
From this distance, probably not.
If you were smoking a joint, I could smell it plain as day. and I'm allergic to it. I consider the smell right up there with an incontinent skunk. As far as the revenue, it sounds like your revenue is to pay for the problem that you're going to cause. In Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. And another question to those who think that it's harmless. My sister and the younger of my two nieces both started with marijuana. 10 years ago, I had to look into the eyes of my brain-dead sister's body as it was dying in a hospital bed. She started with marijuana and worked her way up when it no longer gave her the high she wanted. My father and I had to explain to my niece's 5-year-old why her mother was in jail due to drugs. She started with marijuana. And I have an answer to an alluded to question of where to site this shop. I've got 2 suggestions: Snake Island or the main digester of Deer Island. And as far as the rest of it, this past summer, as I explained to the council president, I have neighbors that seem to want to make Cheech and Chong look like beginners. So over the summer, even though I've got a beautiful deck and a rather large backyard for Winthrop, I very rarely could enjoy them due to the clouds of pot smoke. I would go out there and start choking on it. These people were either 2 houses away or across the street. Unfortunately, because the council, in its wisdom, passed an ordinance where open smoking is allowed, I had no option to call the police and complain, to have them have these clowns put their garbage out. So what am I supposed to do? You're now going to fill the town with these toxic fumes? Is that what you're going to do? Because that's what I'm seeing. And from your speech earlier, Mr. Manager, I got the strong impression that even if we voted no, the state was going to force us and dictate that we open one of these poison shops. Did I misunderstand you?
Yes, you did misunderstand me.
Okay.
Your local community voted yes. That's where we are right now. During the last vote, the community voted yes with the majority of the votes.
Barely.
If it's 50% plus one person, it's more than 50%. And that's how this regulation was written. Like I said, if the community goes the route of voting no and moving towards a ban, there needs to be a signature drive. It needs to get onto the ballot, and then the town would have to vote with the majority no, and the town council would also have to vote no. There is no scenario where the state would stuff it down our throats if the community was moving towards an outright ban.
Okay, you can understand my misunderstanding of that because the state does have a habit of doing that.
Okay, so again, I understand your position on some of these things, but for this to kind of be a productive conversation for everyone, the state did pass a law concerning the legality of the substance. Individual communities can choose to license it or not, but the state, not the local community, has dictated that this is a legal substance. It won a majority of the state through the voters, and our state legislature also updated the bill with changes in the regulations that they wanted. There's no scenario that they're going to stuff it down our throats because they give us local control to license, but we need to get our ducks in the row in the event that the community does not vote no and want to move towards an outright ban.
Well,
Thank you.
the people that know me know my opinion of our state legislature, so I'll leave it at that.
Good evening, everybody. Rob DiMarco, Precinct 6. You know, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm biased here, so I'm a no guy, okay? But that's mostly because of my personal experience. So just everything I have from my personal experience and also being a parent, you know, hey, we're going to have a marijuana dispensary in this town. My initial reaction, no way. You know, that's me. So I'm biased. I'm throwing that out there right up front. But I did go to the October 17th meeting last year because I wanted to hear from everybody. I wanted to hear both sides. I wanted to hear what everybody had to say. And Councilman LeConte, I'm glad you brought it up because there were two things that stuck in my mind really is, number one, despite this hatred for the substance that I have, I don't like being anti-business. That's just something that's not in my makeup. And number two, I also heard you talk that time, and I'm glad you mentioned it today. He talked about, well, what's the difference between a liquor store and a marijuana dispensary? So I took that information home, and I thought about it, and I thought about it a lot. See, I did pay attention. And there's a couple things that, you know, I started thinking about it. Well, what is the difference? And I'm like, well, I came up with a couple. First off, you don't go into a liquor store and buy alcohol brownies. You know what I mean? You don't walk by a store, you don't see brownies in the window, which is something that could be tailored to, that kids could see, oh, well, you know, you don't see that in a liquor store. Another thing I thought about is, you know, I wouldn't want people loitering outside of a facility like this. You know, they're coming from out of town. Revere has already said no to this. So I don't want people loitering around and sitting there. And then I thought, but I don't care what people do in their own homes. So maybe it could be a delivery service where something, it's not counter service, it's delivered to their house, something to be consumed on their own property. So I'm not here today to really say no or yes either way. I think you guys know I've been clear. I don't like it, but you know, times are changing, and I just want to ask the council and the people in this room that if this is the direction we're going in, if we are going to say yes, okay, then if we say yes, let's really give some hard thought about how we want to go about it, okay? Let's give some thought to where these facilities go, what regulations we have on it, and that's pretty much all I have to say is I want to make sure that, you know, we're protecting our kids if we do open up this facility by having this facility be open the right way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Just kind of in order, the products and the labels will actually be regulated by the state. So on the Cannabis Control Commission website right now, there are details of the nature of the packaging, how it has to be child-proof, how you can't just get a brownie wrapped in saran wrap and that says pot brownie on it. It needs to say the dosage and all those types of things. Similar to what the FDA labels are for food would be presented with these products. Signage would be something we could take as local control, so we wouldn't have any of those green pot leaves up and things like that. These are things that's similar to the experiences that we've had with signage and advertising towards youth concerning alcohol and tobacco. We would take those lessons and use them with marijuana as well. You know, the kind of the best ones that are some of the most successful ones around the state are ones that are on the second floor, so they don't have street frontage, dealing with youth and things like that. In terms of loitering, that's a nature of local control that we could have control over. Concerning enforcement, part of our host community agreement, I would like to see in like traffic impacts and parking plans and things like that. In Brookline, we had the facility has been open for 2 years now. We've had a police detail every single day, an hour that they've been open, directing traffic in front of there. We had them come up with a traffic management plan for a daycare that opened close to there so they could facilitate valeting of vehicles for the parents and things like that. So we can deal with people out front. That's under our control. In terms of a delivery service, that's something that we could regulate and license if you thought that was so exactly. It would be a separate license. It wouldn't be a retail and license, like one or the other type of thing. With a delivery, though, the things that are really at the forefront of dealing with some of these things right now is all of these have to have transportation impact plans and security plans that
Sure.
go to the state as well as local law enforcement, because when you're dealing with an industry that has so much cash and so much product related to it, they change the routes that they go from facilities and things like that. It becomes tricky with a delivery service that you can't really manage them point to point all the time, and it does become somewhat unsafe for the people who are working in it. So it is potentially an option as well.
The reason I bring up some of these ideas and that that I'm not set on one thing, but you're going to have a lot of people in this room saying no today. You're going to have some people in this room saying yes today. I'm just trying to, I think there are some things that the no side would say, you know what, if we did it this way, maybe we could live with some aspects of it. And that's why I'm throwing that out there. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. DiMarco for his comments. I also have like a knee-jerk no on this topic when I first thought about it. But our community has voted yes on it, right? And we are, in the last, year and a half since this vote, 2 years, more and more people are coming to town from more liberal areas. This vote is only going in one direction. So I think what's productive of our evening is to figure out what that compromise looks like. Where does it go? Focus on the zoning. What do we want this establishment to look like as far as how classy we can make it and how understated it could possibly be? I know everyone is very emotional and really has a knee-jerk reaction to this, but I actually think this is a very good topic to discuss. And again, I think that finding that compromise is really what this forum is about, because this vote in our community, whether or not we like it or not, has already taken place. So I don't see it actually reversing in a different direction, but I think we can get to a compromise where people are mostly satisfied on this. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Fernandez. I'm a BC law student. So personally, I'm excited for this industry to come. It's a great cash cow industry. As we know from facts, it's one of the fastest growing industries in America today. But the reality is 10 to 20 years ago, black and brown people were getting locked up for this drug disproportionately. So my question is two-part. So first, are there any initiatives to actually reach out to people of color and get their perspective on how we should move forward in this industry commercially? And secondly, what about expunging records? How is the court system going to go about that? Sorry about that. How are we going to expunge records of people who their records are permanently marked from this and they can't get jobs, things of that nature?
Thank you for the question. On the first one, concerning the impacts and reaching out to communities of color, there is part of the way the law was set up is that the first facilities that could get retail licensing were medicinal facilities and what were called economic empowerment or economic empowerment zones. And what they did was they went around the state and looked at where marijuana laws have disproportionately impacted minority groups and came up with a list of communities that part of their licenses should be dedicated to those types of economic empowerment opportunities. So there would be minority-owned businesses. There could be people with felonies on their records, things like that. It tried to offer a more diverse talent pool, the opportunity to enter the market. It's been something that has been missed in multiple other states around the country, California, for example. And it was Massachusetts' attempt to diversify the people that are working in this industry and the people who are opening dispensaries. Time will tell if that's how it shakes out. A fair amount of the licenses that are waiting for local licensure to pass, to enforce them so they can open, are medicinal facilities that converted over. This is a very capital-driven industry that people did need a fair amount of cash on hand to get started in the industry, but the state has worked hard to kind of try to incorporate other groups into the way the system is set up. And then the chief, I think, can talk a little bit more about, records and things like that.
The Criminal Justice Reform Act that took place July 13th of this year addressed the expungement of records, and misdemeanors are down lowered to 3 years after the conviction date, and felonies 5 years after the conviction date. They're entitled to expungement, which is controlled by the Commissioner of Probation, and they file all the petitions with the Commissioner of Probation, who addresses the expungement on a state level.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all this.
Mark Aliberti, Precinct 5. I'm just looking for a clarification. How many stores were you talking about? You said it had something to do with the liquor stores, is what I'm really looking for.
So it's a ratio of package stores to retail establishments. It's a 5-to-1 ratio. So with 5 package stores in town, we'd have 1 liquor license or 1 marijuana retail license that we could do. You guys could, if you're outright banning it, if you go below that, and down the line they may change those regulations, but there is a level of local control to set an upper limit.
Thank you.
Yep. So it would be a fraction. They'd round down, so it'd be 1 if there's 6 liquor stores. Sorry.
Hi, Kathleen Capuccio, 49 Waldemar Ave. Prior to actually my comments, just 2 clarifying questions for not doing my research properly. If this does go to a town ballot, if the voters vote no, does the town council have the right to then vote yes and have this approved?
Yes, they do.
Thank you. My second question is with regard to what we voted on maybe a year ago or however long it was. That was in regards to the legalization of marijuana, I thought. It was not in regards to allowing dispensaries, which the towns have control over?
No, it was the legalization. It's basically the enforcement of it, similar to alcohol and tobacco. Is what the actual act was. It wasn't just people get it confused thinking it's just decriminalization or expunging of records and things like that. It's not. It was legalization to regulate similar to alcohol and tobacco.
Yes. So, but my point is, when we voted, we did not inherent in that vote then agree to dispensaries within the town of Winthrop.
No, voting yes meant
Thank you. No,
so if you voted yes, you approved it for local licensure.
But again, we did. But
and then you have to set up a licensing system. You can, if you had voted no at the time, the council could just enact a ban right now.
Okay.
But since the community voted yes, there's more machinations in place if a ban is.
Yes, but at this point in time, even though the town did by majority vote yes, we still within the town, within the residents, within ballots, within obviously the council, do have the right within the processes to say no to dispensaries.
Yes, you can still ban it. Yeah.
Oh,
you
thank
just have to,
you. I think that's been lost in some of the commentary here.
You have to have the vote, though. You have to have an election to have another ban.
Oh, thank you. No, so I think some of the commentary has been, hey, you voted for it, and it's a fait accompli, which it's not. It's just a clarifying point.
Yeah, no, it's there's more things that need to happen.
Wonderful. So again, just to make it clear to everyone, this is not a fait accompli because people voted yes.
No, but it's getting close.
Thank you. No, thank you. So now I'll go to my real comments here. Again, Kathleen Capuccio, 49 Waldemar Ave. I wrote it down to make it easier for myself, so forgive me for reading. My main concern with marijuana dispensaries is increased access to this drug to minors. I have 3 children, ages 10, 11, and 14. Having dispensaries in our town makes it easier for minors to access this drug. Research has shown that often marijuana purchased legally through dispensaries is then illegally resold to minors. Research has also shown an increase in fake medical marijuana IDs in the hands of minors who purchase the drug. Dispensaries have been linked to an increase in traffic accidents and violations due to OUI operations near dispensaries, and have also been linked to an increase in crimes such as robbery and loitering, just to name two. Our police are already strapped, we all know this, that have lived in this town and have worked in this town for years. How are they going to monitor these dispensaries and the potential negative impacts within their current workforce? If we allow dispensaries, even pro-dispensary groups state that communities with dispensaries should receive funding to ensure policies and programs are in place to help prevent minors from using this drug. Where is that funding coming from? I hear, Mr. Manager, that you've referenced a couple of times the promises that the state is making here. I'm not sure how confident, frankly, I am in the delivery of those promises. Winthrop's budget cannot handle any additional financial burden. There's also research which details the negative impacts of dispensaries on your more traditional businesses in town due to odor issues, traffic impacts, parking, and crime. How will these dispensaries and their negative impacts affect our home values? You can look at Colorado, for example. There are certain areas in Colorado, that's right on the internet, where listings are coming up constantly in certain areas. They're near their dispensaries, and people are moving away from them. I've heard pro-dispensary residents in town state that one of the main issues they support allowing dispensaries is because they will bring tax revenue to our town. I absolutely agree that we need tax revenue, but instead of the town getting into the business of marijuana sales, albeit not directly, how about we finally get it together and sell or develop the old middle school, which has been vacant for too many years, and add that tax revenue to our rolls. In closing, my 14-year-old son came home today after school and asked what I was writing. He said, "Mom, why are you working? It's your day off." I said, "Oh, I'm not working." I told him about this meeting tonight, and without even prompting him with why I am concerned about dispensaries in our town, he said, and I quote, and this is from a child's voice, "Mom, that idea is crazy. Do adults not know how many kids are already smoking weed? So what? They want us kids to get it even easier? Not very bright, Mom." That comes from a 14-year-old. I thank you for listening to my opinions and our voice, and I appreciate the town council holding this meeting tonight to let everyone speak their voice. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Just kind of hitting on some of the stuff that you said in order. Concerning increased access to this drug, it's the intent of the state to regulate something that is a completely illicit black market into something closer to an actual market so that they would have more control of the sale of the drug. So the hope is to move away from illicit sales and drug dealers and things like that. Fake IDs won't work because these places will have to have ID scanning technology and things like that, similar to what our local alcohol establishments have all over the region, kind of industry standard things. In terms of the crimes and the police monitoring the dispensaries, the state will be taking in 16.75% of each sale in a tax. That tax, a portion of it will be divided between local communities. It will come through local aid and other types of programs that the state sets up. And some of that will be towards increasing our funding for police departments and as well as educating our children. So 16.75 from the state. We would locally have a 3% tax that the state would have nothing to say about. That would go into our general fund and to be able to pay for a multitude of different things within the budget, depending on the amount of money. we would also have a 3% host community agreement. So when you do the math, it's 16.75 plus 3% to get us to 19.75 plus 3% to get you to 22.75%. So someone who wants to go in there is paying a 23% tax just to get the product, and that is what they'd be looking at. That 3% would be specifically tailored to go to the community impacts that we detail out, and we'd actually be reporting that back to the company that would hold the license, because they'd want to hold us accountable on how we were actually spending that host community agreement money. Specifically, that would go towards educating our children concerning the nature of this, because regardless of what happens in Winthrop, it's legal in the state. So the conversations will still have to come with parents, with our educators, and from our police and health departments, with the youth of the community, that you may be in Winthrop and not be able to buy it, but you can walk for 5 minutes and be in East Boston, and there can be a place where it's legal for people to buy it. So the conversation will have to be had between every family in this community. I have young children. They're not young enough to be, not old enough to be doing this stuff, hopefully. But I know I will have to have this conversation with them in the future, because regardless of what happens within the municipality that we live in, it's a reality that's coming to this state, and it's something that every community will be educating children on, not just one community or another. In terms of the home values in Colorado, I did work on this in Brookline. The home values changed in locations where they had grow facilities, larger scale, like warehouse style grow facilities and things like that. That really had large impacts to local home values. The places where there were dispensaries or recreational places, the home values haven't been impacted as much, and there are instances where the home values went up. So it's not kind of as clear cut as you had stated in your statement. Thank you.
I will be clear cut about one thing, because you're being very clear about it. This is not all about money. This is not all about money and the revenue that can come in to this town. It is, no, I'm still speaking, thank you. It is not all about the money. This is about my children, my friends' children, our community. Our community already has an alcohol and drug major problem. Major. I understand that it's debatable whether this, and I'm going off my notes, this is when I can, you know, Mr. Boncory. This is not just about money. This is about our community, our children. We live here. To focus continuously, as you have numerous times, on the money that's going to come in. Please, my child's life, regardless of how much I educate them, is worth a lot more than a percentage of revenue. Thank you.
Just one more thing with that. This isn't about money for me. I don't live here. I'm objective to this, and I'm just trying to inform the town council and the people in the community concerning the nature of this process. I have no skin in this game. This is your money. This is your community. What I'm here to do is to help run the government to the best of my abilities and to help your electeds make decisions. At the end of the day, it doesn't change my job if you guys vote yes or no on it. All I am doing is trying to inform you as a group to be able to make the best decision that you think is right. That's all I'm here for. I don't have any skin in this. So.
Hi, Katie Palekia, 4 Willis Ave, Precinct 2. I'm just coming up here to say I support this dispensary in the town. As you guys mentioned, there are a lot of pros and cons, but I think from a financial perspective, I do think that the pros do outweigh the cons in this instance. I also think that we should be a progressive town as we've been in other circumstances, for example, the recovery coaches. I I also know that there's a lot of projects that are out there within the town, like the Center Business District and other things that are affecting especially my neighborhood, for example, flooding and things like that. I think that having more revenue is really important. As I know in previous town meetings, I've heard that there's not necessarily a spending problem as there is a revenue problem. So I'm hoping this could potentially be a way to bring in more money. I do think for regulation-wise, I think it should be regulated similarly to alcohol and tobacco. And I think people have a choice if they're going to be using this product or not. As far as where it might be the Center Business District, just a potential. But I don't really know if there's, I guess it would be up to the whole community to decide what would be the best place to be. And my question is, I was wondering if it's at all possible to negotiate for more than that 3 plus 3% for the town.
Thank you for your comments. No, you can't go over the 3% for the host community agreement. That's a cap that was set by the state, and it's generally what's coming to fruition in terms of host community agreements around the state. But just to caution everyone in this room, people have referred to this as kind of like a cash crop or a cash cow, capital projects that we could do with this. You need to reduce the scope of the amount of money that we're looking at. You know, even if this is one dispensary clearing millions of dollars in a year, it's not going to solve the capital needs of this community, long-standing financial decisions. This is not a be-all, end-all type of thing. This is a nice additional revenue stream that maybe could help, but this is something that's like stemming the tide of bigger changes that would need to happen. This is not going to make it so you guys don't have to consider debt exclusions or overrides. This isn't going to fix your roads, those types of things. It's thinking of it as an employee or two, maybe some capital projects type of thing, but people need to rein in a little bit when they're getting some of these ideas. So Brookline, for example, the place is called Netta. I encourage people to look it up online. It's like an Apple store, but for marijuana. They're going to clear $60 million probably once they're recreational, which is a ton. 3% of that plus another 3%. It's a lot of money, but that's also going to be one of the most popular places in the state where people travel from like around the country to go to. What we could have here may be significantly more limited than that, and the amount of money available that we take in with a host community agreement through the 3% or even 3% in local excise tax may not be what everyone's envisioning. So I just want to caution that it is, though it could be a changing thing for the budget, it's not, this isn't going to fix the budget woes long term by any means. Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name's Nathan Buckholtz, Precinct 2. I took my notes on my cell phone, so when I'm looking down at it, I'm just reading my notes here. So I'm a parent of a 2- and 4-year-old, and my family and I are debating whether we want to stay in Winthrop or move. It's not a hidden secret that the school system is average at best. The tests can be much better. Boston area is known for great communities with great schools, and there's a lot of competition that Winthrop is up against. As you spoke earlier, the revenue, sources of revenue is tight, or someone spoke about that. I think having a legal dispensary that's tightly regulated should be welcomed here. I grew up in the Reagan era. I grew up hearing Nancy Reagan saying, "Say no to drugs, just say no." And it was a form of extended prohibition. If we were here 50 years ago or longer speaking about alcohol, I would have people saying, "Why?" when I'm trying to get alcohol to be legal. How many people here believe that alcohol should be illegal? You do? Okay. I respect that. It'd certainly make your job much easier.
Well, the fact that we have an alcohol problem, right? And,
Absolutely.
And we have a liquor store in almost every major intersection in town. I'm a strong believer in learned behavior, and I think juveniles learn their behavior from their adults. Much like the educational problem.
Chief.
Can we hear these conversations? Can you, Rick? You don't want to.
I'm sorry, I was going to be short. But much like your educational problem, I strongly believe your educational major portion of it is done at home. It's what the parents put into it and what the kid gets out of it. We have major successes here. 2 kids to MIT in the last 2 years, Harvard, Princeton. You know, you come in at graduation time, you read the wall, and you're very impressed on where our kids are going. But again, it takes the parents, it's not just the teachers, to really enforce that. And I'm not the brightest one in my house. My wife is, so I'll leave that to her. But the alcohol, we have an alcohol problem. We have an opiate problem in town. We have developed whole departments to try to address the opiate issue caused by Purdue Pharma out of Connecticut. And now today I just was informed Purdue Pharma was just licensed by the FDA to come up with the cure for the cause that they created. So at what level these pharmaceutical companies are getting more and more money commercially, and to create the problem, then to try to fix the problem with another drug that they're getting billions of dollars with. But we have to deal with the Sunday morning call of someone hanging themselves in a garage because of their addiction. That's the reality that I see, that my officers see, way more than I see, because I get the phone call after they've been there. So we do have an alcohol problem, we do have an opiate problem, and I understand this is state law, and I can't reverse state law. I understand that too. My job is now to deal with the law and to deal with it here in Winthrop. So whatever the council votes, whatever the community wants, we will deal with as a police agency. Certainly I'm against it, and I'm against all the alcohol establishments as well.
I respect what you say, and I applaud you for that.
Thank
you. If I didn't know any better, I would say that you were looking over my shoulder, because many of the points that you stated I also made. Right after I was going to speak about the Reagan era and learning to say no to drugs, I made a note that that I plan on teaching, and I currently teach my children right from wrong. This includes how to deal with alcohol when it's presented to them. I was raised in the South, Southern Baptist. Alcohol was bad. A lot was bad. And I think life experiences is what allowed me to make my own decisions and take from what my parents taught me was right from wrong to what I have determined what's right and wrong myself. And one of the points that I've determined was that cannabis is not a gateway drug. I believe that alcohol is. I don't know anybody that's ever took a puff of a joint before they ever had a sip of a beer. So, when those who speak saying that marijuana is a gateway drug, it may lead to further things for those who want to continue to experiment. But cannabis alone doesn't create the opiate abuse and everything else. CVS sells opiates. Why can't we outlaw that? And it's, not the lesser of the two evils, but I believe that by having the option of cannabis as a substitute to alcohol or opiate addiction, there can actually be some pluses that come out of it. Somebody might get stuck on their couch and eat too many Cheetos and, put on a couple of pounds. But they're not going to be increasing domestic abuse. They're not going to be increasing robberies. They're not. Can you speak to the statistics about the detrimental effects of cannabis versus alcohol?
No, I can share with you is the HIDA report, the Rocky Mountain HIDA Association, which is a federal organization of high-intensity drug enforcement in Colorado specifically. And, what they found is 125 deaths increased after legalization in motor vehicles compared to only 53 before that. It was a significant increase in motor vehicle deaths. The people who operate in the car, toxicology said they had marijuana THC in the system, which means that they consumed it within hours of driving. We've seen it on the expressway here, where the trooper got killed, the person was, smoking marijuana. Yeah, we can have that with alcohol too. And we probably have it at the same rate, if not more, on the alcohol side right now. But what Colorado experienced was far increase in deaths on motor vehicle accidents than before it was legalized.
How about domestic abuse? How about violent crimes?
The crimes in Colorado did go up. Most of the crimes were around the juvenile ages. Burglaries did go up. The suicides went up, and youth suicides went up because they were grabbed selling marijuana in school and were being expelled. One kid hung himself. There was another, all the stats are not the most compelling story for me, but the parents' stories are the most compelling.
I think that would be an emotional stance, which is not a...
Well, I think it's compelling for someone who's been through that experience, who saw her son buy marijuana, be consumed with just marijuana, and then come out and say he was so consumed he tried to hang himself, and then say we tried to pull him out of it and he couldn't get away from that marijuana. That speaks not to an emotional, but someone who's an eyewitness to an addicted problem.
A singular incident, though.
In the report, it's 175 pages long. I'll be happy to post it on the Winthrop Police Department's Facebook page so everyone can read it, because the stats are there. I don't want to, make them up and then be wrong by one stat. But I would just look at the whole problem. Hospitalizations increased, significantly in Colorado. We're talking 35%. Poison control calls increased 153% in Colorado after the legalization. So
how is cannabis poisonous?
Well, they're not saying it's poisonous, but what's happened is the calls increased so drastically because of the edibles, and the children were eating the edibles at proms and socials. So the Colorado report, I think, is the most instructive on what we're going to be facing. How do we deal with that, I think is the point. How do we deal with it as a local community, as a law enforcement response, as a school response, and a public health department response? It's here, and I can't change the law, so I'm not going to debate it.
Sure.
It's here, right? So how do we deal with it? How do we want to address it as a local community? Do we want a zone for it, or do we want an election for it? So I didn't want to cut you off. I apologize.
No. I welcome that. I actually found out about this meeting tonight, or this afternoon, so I came ill-prepared, and everything I'm speaking to tonight was just what has been on my mind. So, it exists today. Okay, so, yes, it exists today. I can have it delivered to my house today. I can get it from my friends. I can get it on the black market. I can legally grow it myself. States first voted for it medicinally. Now their trends are showing they're voting for it recreationally. It's going to happen. Winthrop, whether it's 10 years from now, 50 years from now, it's going to have legal pot shops in the town. It's whether we want to generate the revenue from it today, and that's really what it comes down to. So I would love to stay in the Winthrop area. It needs to find sources of revenue, and if we can do that without having a recreational marijuana shop in town, I welcome that. But otherwise, I don't know if my family's going to be able to stay here forever because of the education. I'm hoping that some of this money that it passes, some of the money can flow to the educational system and increase that. So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Francesca, Precinct 3. I moved here about a year ago. I am very pro this. I think a big part of it too is how kids are getting it now, adults are getting it now. They're getting it through dealers and back alleyways, and it's dangerous. What are you getting that's mixed in with what you're buying? So I think that that's part of it, but I did have two questions, and maybe you can speak to this with your experience in Brookline, but how does a recreational facility affect other businesses? I would imagine the convenience stores would do really well, but just curious. And then what does the education in schools for teachers, students, and parents look like? Because I think a lot of this and a lot of the understanding will come from an increase in education that this doesn't have to be a super scary thing. It doesn't have to be a gateway drug. This could just be something, that's as casual as alcohol is in our society now. So what does that messaging sort of look like?
Thank you. In terms of how does it impact another business, I mean, that's kind of complex. There isn't like one easy answer for it. You can look at different states have enforced it different ways. Colorado and Washington and Oregon set up dispensaries. Nevada passed it, and they started last year doing it. They sold it out of liquor stores. It was already regulated type of thing. So there's no like 1-to-1 ratio of like, 7-Eleven's closed because dispensaries open type of thing. Like there's no easy correlation between those things, or a strong enough correlation that's been reported on. In terms of the education in schools, first, that's kind of, if we get a place, it's on us to kind of develop the curriculum, and that's the intent of a host community agreement. But going forward, we're all going to be looking to the state to kind of help us with somewhat of like a universal education program, because like I said, even if you guys don't go this route in Winthrop, it's going to be in Boston, it's going to be other places around here. The availability of things that kids can get their hands on now, I mean, anyone here who deals with kids in school, like Juuls and those vape things and stuff, all that stuff, you can put marijuana in it in just a different fashion type of thing. So it's going to be very similar problems for all parents to be educating their children on, and our school departments. But it really is on us to initially set up the, this is something that was illegal and now it's legal, and educating our youth about, it's serious. Like, kids' brain development gets impacted by it. So it's something that we shouldn't tread lightly on and joke about the Cheetos on the couch and all that type of stuff, because with kids it's super serious, and they can turn out differently if they use it too young.
So I guess my follow-on question would be, is there anything that we could put in place as a town that if a student was involved in smoking weed at a young age, sort of like an intervention program, so that they wouldn't get expelled and then be on their own and getting up into mischief that way?
That would be something that we'd work on with the superintendent and the police chief, if we were going that route. This stuff. So there's two kind of ways to look at it. On the one hand, you're trying to remove a gray market that we have no control over. On the other, we're gonna kind of look to regulate a market. In regulating that market, we have the ability to test, we have the ability to, there's independent testing facilities, there's all these different types of things that there's not going to be mold or pesticide and things like that. So some of those adverse effects that could happen go away. But in terms of educating people in schools, that would be a local control option about how we enforce with youth. If we send them to diversionary programs, maybe we tie it with something like CASA and things like that. That we have the opportunity to work with some of our local not-for-profits that are working in these arenas and kind of go at it together, because again, regardless of if we have it here or not, it's something that we're going to have to be educating our students about, and it's going to be kind of a community-wide effort of dealing with something that was once illegal becoming legal. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Grace, Precinct 4. I disagree with the alcohol versus the marijuana. Can everybody hear me? Alcohol is much different than marijuana. Okay. You're going to have to let me rant. I lost too many people through alcohol. 1. 2, I know marijuana is addictive. Anything that's addictive becomes habit forming. And so I've been in recovery for over 25 years, not because marijuana did it, but because a substance called alcohol brought me to my knees. I've had marijuana and I've had alcohol. Tonight I gave up working with the Ryan House in Lynn because addiction is real. If you've never seen what addiction does, then you haven't opened your eyes and you're just skimming the surface about cannabis. It's marijuana. A drug is a drug is a drug. And for some people, medicinal reasons, I understand that. I also had a seizure disorder, and I still do. I could get cannabis. I don't want it. I've been on this ride. Back in the 70s, you could buy it. I didn't need a store to go to it. I am not for it. I think it's smoke and mirrors. If it's anything like a methadone clinic where the state is involved and the kids go or the adults go, they never come off of it. I have an adult daughter who's still working that methadone clinic because it's not regulated the way it should be. And it's heartbreaking.
And I don't know how many parents should be here that shouldn't be here screaming for their kids. Because if it is a money-making deal, and you say the state's regulating it, anything like the other clinics that they have, doesn't work as well, as smooth as you say it is. And it's not about the money. It is about healthy minds, you know, and I am afraid for this town. It's so small. You know, you're talking big numbers to help the revenue of the town. And I understand the tax burden is on the community. But when we have an opiate addiction, and we know it, and we have an opiate addiction, we have an alcohol addiction, and as far as alcohol, Mr. LaCosta, kids can go get anyone to buy them alcohol. Not anyone, but kids have a way of doing it. And so whether I know it's legal in the state, but let me rant about it. I am not for it. I think the community the CASA program was put into place because of the fact that we found out that kids were affected at a very young age from drugs and alcohol. So I guess we're defeating our whole purpose of why we want a healthy community. If it's for medicinal purposes, I would say okay. But it is just to have a party. I'm sorry that the state really voted for it, and that's my honest opinion. I did not vote for it, and I would never approve of it. I've been affected by it. It wrecked my life, and now I'm here to say that, you know, it doesn't work the way you think it does. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Concerning methadone clinics and things like that, this wouldn't be that. This is a recreational place. I referenced an Apple store before. Maybe a CVS would be a better example or something like that. It's not something that would be prescribed to people. We're not talking about medicinal stuff. We're talking about a recreational dispensary where there would be types of products that had marijuana that the customer would choose what they wanted to buy, and it wouldn't be prescribed to them. The state is involved with the testing of the substances so they can talk about proper doses or compare doses across different products and things like that. But it's nothing where people can go in and kind of get something every day based off of a program or anything like that. So again, like I keep reiterating, and I want everyone to really understand here, I don't care about the money. Like, I'm just here to inform you about this so you guys can make a decision. If the money comes, great. I can program it and I can do some stuff with your community. If it doesn't come, that's fine too. There's other ways for this community to deal with some of the financial restraints that we have. And at the end of the day, this is why the council's here, and this is why they're talking to the community right now, is that they really want to get a sense of which way is the community leaning, yes or no, and if it goes out to another vote, then vote again on it. The community voted yes for it one time. Even if it was close, the community still voted for it. There is a process to go through to ban it, and if that's the way the community wants, I think I speak with the council on that that's the direction we'll go. It's not that the council or myself want to kind of enact a policy that the community's not on board with. The whole purpose of this is to hear everyone out and make sure that everyone feels like they have the opportunity to kind of advocate for their position and speak their voice at the table and make sure as many people, this is being broadcast on WCAT and things like that, make sure that everyone that wants to learn about this can learn about it that isn't here. So again, no decisions have been made yet or anything like that. And the whole point of this forum is for everyone to kind of have a discussion and for everyone in the community to kind of come together and help decide which way the community wants to go. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Brad Gaynor. I'm in Precinct 6. And I just have a couple of questions, I guess. I've never been in a recreational pot dispensary, so I have no idea. I can go into the liquor store and buy 20 handles of bourbon. Will I be able to walk out with 20 pounds of weed? Is there a regulation as to how
Yes.
much I will be able to buy?
Yep. Nope. There's an upper limit for how much you can possess at one time.
You keep saying the Apple Store, and I get the image is going to be techno, it'll be contemporary. It's not going to be some rundown, hippie, Greenleaf place. But I could go into the Apple Store and use my computer. And I imagine you said it's not going to be like a bar where I'm not going to be able to go in like the smoke room in East Boston on Bennington and go in there and smoke my joint.
No. So when I use the example of an Apple Store, I know this may not be politically correct right now, but has anyone been to a Chick-fil-A lately? You can order with your phone ahead of time, and you can walk in and say, hey, I'm Austin. I put my order in. Give me my food. I already paid with my card. If I don't know what I want, I can go stand in line, and I can kind of look at the menu and say, oh, I want this thing, this thing, this thing. They bring that. If you're inexperienced, you go in, and this is why I use the Apple Store, like the Genius Bar, someone who can kind of walk you through a menu of something. They can say, what are you looking for from the product? Do you want to sit on your couch and just eat Doritos all night? Are you looking to work? Whatever. I mean, this is an industry type of thing that they do, but it's a service that's offered from some of them that they kind of walk you through the products. It's different than someone talked about the 70s buying weed type of thing. It's different than the joints back in the day, and that's honestly one of the most dangerous things. Is it's about factors of 10 times more potent than it once was. So people who haven't used it in 50 years may want to ease into it, regardless of if we have it here or not. But so I'm talking about it's a unique shopping experience. I mean, Amazon Bookstore is a thing now. You go in, you use your Prime account, you don't have to exchange cash type of thing. It's a different shopping experience than what people usually associate with what you said, the dark, dingy head shop that has some bongs in the front and you get a dime bag in the back type of thing. That's not what it is. We're looking for an actual business to function in town within a set of regulations that we set forth.
I mean, you just reminded me of something else. Earlier you spoke of it being such a high cash, high product business. And they changed the routes and all that good stuff, security stuff. Is it up to the town how they regulate how the product is sold? Meaning, could we say credit cards only, no cash, to at least limit the potential armed robbery of the store?
No, we wouldn't limit that, but what we would have along with the Cannabis Control Commission is we would have oversight over all of their security plans. So liquor store, for example, they may tell us if they have cameras and things like that. There's some regulations that they have with the alcohol, ABCC at the state level. With this, it's far, far more detailed. You need to talk about the locations of your cameras when your staff changes over. You have to really give a detailed plan because they don't want these places to get robbed. The police need to know when the times that these places could be the least secure or potentially robbed, and that's when the police kind of come in and try. They need those plans to be able to work on that. So the police department would have kind of an additional layer of insight into the operation of the business. We can't necessarily prescribe to them the nature of their transactions. In terms of credit cards, it is still hard for them, a lot of them, to get FDIC insured, so the nature of their digital transactions is difficult. It's something that's still a federal crime in reality. I mean, that's kind of not been said in here, but it's still scheduled Class A whatever drug, and so I mean, they're not going to get their deposits insured and things like that the same way that other businesses would. So that's something that's changing within that industry, but that's up to that industry and the lobbyists and all those people who are involved with it to do that type of stuff with it.
Two more quick things. I'm sorry, Chief.
You want to say one? Time, place, and manner. I look at a time, place, and manner as what we can actually work out in the agreement. What's the hours of operation in the zoning, with our zoning people here tonight? What's the hour of the operation is? We know after midnight is something we don't want. That's a lot of armed robberies at closing time, especially towards the midnight hour. So we'd be looking at something similar to what we have at the liquor stores. And again, in that agreement, we would have wording and language in there that we would be able to view any video camera if there was a crime on the premise or around the premise. It's not just on the premise or in the premise, it's outside the premise in the neighborhood. We want to know what's going on in that neighborhood as well. Are people hanging out? Do we need to address that? How do we address that? So we'll work very specifically if that's the will of the voters.
Thank you. Two more quick things, if I may. One, I guess I'm for the ban. I just don't want it to be the face of the town. Right now, Belle Isle Seafood's the face, seafood. I just don't want like the Greenleaf to become the face of Winthrop. It's not my idea of the town I want to live in.
Hey man, I like the seafood too. Don't worry about it.
Number two, short of me walking around and getting signatures, and if that's how it's done, to hold a special election, to have a vote to get this thing banned, maybe you could assist, Chief. Is there anybody, because it is still a federal crime, is there anybody at the federal level I could lobby to get this, the kibosh on this type of thing?
Yeah, the short answer to that is the White House. He'll be right on, he's already been very outspoken and has, I just don't know how involved the federal government's going to be in the actual shops that are popping up. They haven't been enforcing the Brooklines, and I think there's only one marijuana cafe that's been licensed, and that's in Boston and Alston area. So they haven't shut these places down yet. So I don't think their involvement is going to be focused in here on Massachusetts. There's too many states now that are involved. And really, Colorado has been operating a lot longer than Massachusetts has been legalized. And we haven't seen them affect that state at all.
Yeah, this is the Colorado, their senators were fighting with the current administration and current Department of Justice concerning, it gets into like a states' rights type of thing, which is difficult for kind of the conservative position that they want states' rights, except for in this instance type of thing. It's not the first time they've contradicted themselves, but it's something that across the country, as states have passed regulations for the legalization, not just the medicinal uses, because they were cracking down on California previously and stuff like that, but since they've gone legal and recreational, they haven't been cracking down on those dispensaries and things like that. If there's code violations, sure, but that's not necessarily the federal government. That's a state, local control type of thing.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Council. I know you just react to the voters.
Thanks. Bob Carroll, Precinct 6. As a member of the Planning Board and as a citizen of Winthrop, I kind of look at this pretty maybe pragmatically, a little bit like the chief was, how do we deal with this? So November 2016, Winthrop voted in favor of legalizing marijuana, 53% to 47%. I'm not sure that the likelihood of that vote to change shortly in the next 6 weeks may happen. So for that reason, I would urge the town council to direct the planning board to work to draft through a draft bylaw. We are not alone in this. There are other communities actually every community is dealing with this right now. So we've had some good guidance and we've seen some examples from other communities that are similar, Manchester by the Sea being the sort of maybe closest and most similar. And they bring up a lot of good issues that I think we need to address. And I say this because I'm not trying to say if people want to vote against this, they should go for it, they should get their signatures, and they should vote again. But in the meantime, if that doesn't happen or it doesn't fail, or if that fails, then we have nothing in the books at all to do and deal with this. So again, Manchester by the Sea, good example. It's sort of, they ask and answer some very good questions. Where do we want this located? What is the distance from schools or daycares? Is there smoking allowed on the premises? What are the hours of operation? What are the signage? Can I see product through the window? All these things, they're very simple, straightforward questions I think we can go through and as a community sort of decide if it happens, what it should look like. I just urge you to tell the planning board to do that now. Again, I'm just a citizen. I'm not speaking for the planning board members who are here tonight. But again, we just don't want to be left with nothing and scrambling if a no vote doesn't come, because maybe you could speak to the time frame. If that no vote doesn't come, then we gotta have them, right? So anyway, so I just urge you to kind of get us and get the wheels in motion, and we're happy to help. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is it okay? You want me to start? Okay, just making sure. Good evening, this is Leanna Ruzioni. Hello. And amongst other things, I work for CASA, Community Action for Safe Alternatives. For those who do not know, we are a nonprofit 501(c) prevention coalition here in Winthrop. Our mission is to work with the community and its leaders to strategize and implement effective ways to create a healthier Winthrop. Our focus is around youth and families impacted by substance misuse, their mental health needs, and other risk behaviors. It's also important for me to note before I go on, as a state and federally funded coalition, we are unable to advocate for or against a ballot question. Many individuals have asked if the coalition would be represented here tonight with a statement. I was asked to be here, by our board of directors to speak on behalf of the group on an issue that brings everybody here tonight. As a coalition whose focus is on the well-being of young people, we want to make clear that we are not here to make any comments referencing adult responsible recreational use. Normalizing anything increases the likelihood of that consumption. We are and have been for years combating binge drinking because young people are plastered with the normalized idea that it's cool, a rite of passage, and that it's not a big deal. Well, years of research have told us that it actually is a big deal. It drastically impacts brain development, it damages your organs, and it often leads to poor decisions that lead to some significant consequences. Some people can socially consume alcohol and have none of these ramifications. Prescription drugs are legal and are often prescribed by people who we trust the most, doctors. We know now, without proper supervision and parameters, many drugs are addictive, harmful to our bodies, and lead to significant consequences. Some people take prescriptions their whole lives without becoming addicted. Introducing marijuana to this mix will only make it more visible, socially acceptable, and glamorizing to youth that it's cool and that it's not a big deal. The moral of the story is that things happen, and as a community, we are encouraging everyone to think for the entire community, not just their own personal gain. What parameters will be established to ensure the protection of youth and the community given the uncertainty of the legalization rollout and how the issues around consumption will be policed and managed? According to the Boston Globe recently, close to 200 of the 351 municipalities have barred recreational marijuana operations. This tells us that there's a difference between believing marijuana should be legal to use and thinking a neighborhood store sounds like a good idea. We have all spoken to many people, including some of our board members, who were not aware that voting yes to recreational marijuana meant that a shop was going to open in Winthrop. All substances are harmful to our bodies and our mind. For some, marijuana is a better alternative to other substances. For others, they identify it as a gateway to other more harmful drugs, and that's damaging to them, their family, and their lifestyle. While for some that use marijuana socially, and it's not a problem, and then there's others that use marijuana as a medical tool for their well-being. We also know that marijuana has high tar content and affects brain development and mental health in youth under the age of 25. We are not here to argue that any of these statements are true or not true. These are all factual statements that our research shows us, and that's what drives our work. Our watchword here is caution. Let's make a decision that we will not have to devote years of time and money unraveling. Our message this evening is that everyone is impacted by marijuana and all substances in different ways. Let's learn from our mistakes in the past, and as a community have the opportunity to clearly decide what we want and how we want it in Winthrop. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very unprepared and very shy, as you know. I want to thank Jim Corkum for telling me in Browns today that this meeting was going on, because I didn't know it. I'm Barbara Civilis. I live in Precinct 1, and I have a great investment in this community. That's just a little bit of the Civilis family. So I'm going to ask some rhetorical questions, because I really am totally unprepared, and I'm completely baffled that you're talking about 3% revenue when this town wouldn't accept vacation rental, which would generate 5.7 to 8.45% and bring in beautiful people from all over the world. So some rhetorical questions. Sorry to meet you this way, but you said you had no skin in the game. But if you don't balance the budget and do a good job and bring in the revenue, is that skin in the game?
I will be presenting.
Okay, I said it's rhetorical. Okay.
Well, I would like to respond. I mean, honestly, I'm presenting a balanced budget regardless of marijuana money.
okay.
So no one here needs to worry about
But you do need to have revenue some way. My family's been in this community for 98 years this year. So family legend, you hear lots of things. Winthrop once was a dry community. I've served on the Police Chiefs Advisory Council when we didn't even know about marijuana, but the #1 problem in Winthrop was domestic abuse from alcoholism. So I'm just giving you some facts. Again, I said I'm not prepared, but I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever held your son in your arms because he was a victim of a violent crime on Putnam Street in Winthrop? I had that experience 32 years ago when a young resident bit his ear off and spit it into the street, and he was on marijuana. And actually his father was urinating in the cup for him. Started right in Winthrop High School, and we didn't believe in deep pocket suits. Have you ever held the mother of a triplet as she buried your daughter at a gravesite? I have. Have you ever had a granddaughter who wants to die? I have. Have you ever worked in a psychiatric clinic on a research project for the federal government and interviewed people and looked at their records? You can call it what you want, but guess what they all started with? Marijuana. So these are all rhetorical questions. What you accept today, you will embrace tomorrow. So watch out what you're looking for. You have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So when that 2-year-old or 4-year-old reaches 18 and you get that call, you got to think about that. Would you please just, okay? Okay. No, I don't mean to single anyone out, but I want you to know. Okay. I understand that, and I taught my kids right from wrong and raised the nicest kid you ever want to meet. I'm not going to debate it, okay? I'm just.
So if you two could take this offline.
Listen, I want to be a neighbor. I'm just asking you a rhetorical question, okay? Okay, all right, okay. You know what, I'll hug you when we leave if you know me at all, okay, if you allow that, okay? You talk about buffer zones. The average one, I think, is around 500 feet. I'm not prepared, but Winthrop's 1.6 square miles. So you really need to think about all of these things. And you talk about the state of Colorado and the state of Washington. The federal government is constantly looking over their shoulder. I don't know what's right from wrong, because I'm an addict, but I'm a chocolate addict. And I mean that. You know, every day I try to give up chocolate. Addiction is an awful thing, and I wanted to thank those who are brave enough to say they have the problem, because everybody's got some kind of a problem. We're all broken in some way. I would say really think this over. I'm sorry I wasn't better prepared. I'm not looking to single anyone out, but I'm looking to make a point. Again, remember, what you accept today, you will embrace tomorrow. And if you're looking for revenue, why don't you try vacation rental and tourism? You know, okay? Thanks for your time. Phil, did you want to ask me something? No, I know that, okay? But vacation rental is a little different and a little classier. I'm not going to get into the statistics of it. I have 13 years experience with it and retired from it and brought in the most beautiful people. You would not really know who comes to Winthrop, okay? I'm not going to debate that. I was sitting in my seat saying, I really can't believe what I'm hearing here in 1.6 square miles of real estate. And I don't believe in sending business out of town. We do business. I understand there's a store going to open up over near GameStop in Chelsea. Give them a bus ticket to there, would you? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tangi Safuni, Precinct 2. I just came here tonight just to educate myself on this entire process, and so just listening to Austin and everybody out in the audience asking questions, I just have a couple more questions and some things I just wanted to clear up for myself. Are the package stores included in the equation that calculates how many licenses can be granted for our town? So I know like a mobile gas station is allowed to sell some, maybe not hard liquor, but beer and wine. Is that included in that equation, or is it just liquor stores?
No, it's just liquor stores.
Okay. So currently with liquor stores, they get in front of the licensing board on an annual basis, and I think it's maybe a $1,700 fee, annual fee. Currently, that $1,700 fee is written out to the town of Winthrop, I'm pretty sure. Where is that money getting deposited into, and what are we using those funds for? Are we using it towards education?
Into the general fund and for everything.
And for everything. So I think I recall earlier in the conversation that we had stated that we would set fees, and some of these fees would go towards education. Are we going to make sure that if we set this fee, that money is put into some sort of a revolving fund or some sort of a fund that would go towards public safety or education or of some sort?
There would be two things on that. One, there's a local license, so it's a sales tax, 3%. That goes into our general fund. The host community agreement can be up to 3%, and that would be programmed specifically for host community impacts. So that would be between our police department, our schools, things like that. Really, the biggest thing I've seen around the state with this is about the education of our youth and the health impacts of it. So a lot of the things people have been hitting on tonight, that's where that money would go towards. That money we can't just drop into the general fund. That money has to be specifically programmed, and then when we get audited by those companies, because any company that's giving us 3% off the top is going to want to know if we have a host community agreement with them, how we're spending the money. It's going to be on us to document every single time someone like Deanna is going to the schools to talk to them with recovery coaches, or bringing them, DARE's not really a thing anymore, but modernized versions of like drug education and things like that. That's what we'd be using that 3% from. And I assume stuff will be coming from the state as well concerning youth education.
So could some of that go towards CASA? I mean, that's our DARE.
We had a host community agreement with Medicinal in Brookline. We did have an equal amount go to the town and an equal amount go to what was called the Brookline Community Foundation. We had wanted them to do marijuana-related education and things like that. They negotiated a separate agreement concerning our recreational host community agreement. We, as the town, negotiated the 3% with them, and we had a small community fee that went towards an outside entity, but that outside entity, trying to be almost like a good neighbor type of thing, they reached out to NETA and negotiated their own agreement too, but that was separate than the municipal government.
Okay. The licenses are annual?
Yep.
And are they given out by the licensing board, or do they have to be presented in front of that?
So most of the regulation
department
control
head.
falls with the state in this. It's through the Cannabis Control Commission. So we'd have to have a host community agreement first. Then from there, and that would be a public hearing process. Then from there, that could go to the state. The way it would hit our local licensing process would be after our local zoning process. We would do zoning concerning permitting of the business. So as Terry had brought up before, type, place, manner, those types of things. We would be regulating that through the local zoning. Then licensing, if we wanted that to fall with the licensing board, or if we wanted that to fall with the town council, that would be up to the council to determine how it kind of finishes up. But after the state approves everything, they get a provisional license that then we would have to approve at the local level. Now, the nature of like adding like the $1,700 local fee type of thing, it's only fees for processing the application. And in this sense, a lot of the application process actually falls to the state. So it's not a local thing, so we wouldn't be able to choose that much for the local license. We get our local licensing impact the similar way that we would for alcohol through that host community agreement.
Okay. And my other one was, and I think it was brought up a little earlier by Mr. Carroll, was are there any state regulations already out there stating how far they can be from a school? Or is that
500 feet.
something that what is it?
500 feet.
Okay, so that already exists.
Yep, the town can reduce that.
Okay.
And the town could, the state doesn't have regulations about daycares. The town could take daycares into account. We had taken daycares into account with our medicinal, but we use the state regulations with our recreational. Brookline had an absurd number of daycares, so it was almost turned into exclusionary zoning if we took the daycares into account. So something else to kind of keep in mind. But there is in the state regulations 500 feet from K through 12 school.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Carla Vitale. I live in Precinct 2. I had a bunch of thoughts, but I'm a little bit overwhelmed with all that I'm hearing and learning, so I'll just say a few quick things. I don't think the question before us tonight is whether or not marijuana is good or bad. We all know we're adults and it's a personal choice, so I really don't think that's up for debate. But I think when, as a state, we voted for it, so it's here, and I hear that argument and I understand it. And as adults, we can drive wherever we want to get it because it's going to be legal now. But if we allow it here in Winthrop in our community, what's that message to our children? I have a 15-year-old daughter, and like some other parents have said, it's learned behavior. They're watching us drink alcohol, and they think it's okay. And I struggle with how I try to teach her not to drink alcohol because she sees me drink alcohol. We have an opioid problem that we refuse to admit for a lot of years. We're finally getting to the point where we admit it. We've created whole departments around it. So what are we going to say? What am I going to say to her when we start to have a retail dispensary here in town? So that's a thought that I have. Excuse me. I think the residents may not have exactly known in Winthrop what they voted for in 2016. I think they thought the question may have been, is marijuana acceptable? But now that we're getting more deep into it, I think they're really getting a greater understanding of the impacts to Winthrop. It's not, is it okay if I smoke, or is it okay if my neighbor smokes? It's a much bigger, closer to home situation when we talk about a retail dispensary here in town.
our town manager mentioned the security plans and how serious it is, and that the state and our local law officials will need to know a lot, and it's really serious. In preparation for tonight, I watched a quick blurb on HBO last night on a show called Vice, and it was about Colorado and some retail dispensaries, and it may have been cultivating or growers, manufacturers, and what their security looked like. And it looked like huge men in body armor with machine guns. And I just wonder what that will look like in Winthrop. They're transporting not just product, but money. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. I don't know exactly what I saw, but I definitely know that I want to learn more about it. And I hope that my friends and relatives want to learn more about it too. Lastly, I think that to be able to make an ordinance by December 31st is very aggressive. It's mid-September, and I don't know if we're ready to do that by December 31st. I don't think we need to rush to fail. Marijuana's not going anywhere. We can jump in that game at any time. I think we could do two things, and I could be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure we could vote to have a special and give Winthrop one more time to really understand it, or we can ask the Attorney General to extend this moratorium through March. It's happened in at least 2 other communities in the state where we've not had a manager for a very long time. With no disrespect, we haven't had a permanent manager. We've been a little in flux. I'm sure the AG would give us that leeway, and I think it's worthwhile so that we can all get on the same page and make sure we know exactly what we're doing. I understand the revenue problem, and I respect it. I just don't know if 3% revenue back to the town is enough for me tonight to say, let's do it. So that's how I feel. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Todd DeCoste, Precinct 4. Just to be clear, there are no samples tonight, correct? No samples, right?
In this room.
As far as we go forward, as a child, where McGee's liquor store is, across the street, there's a nondescript store. It had windows up high and just a symbol on the front of it. And as a kid, I had no idea what it was until my mom dragged me in. They threw me in a chair, and this guy came and he put metal in my mouth. That's what I picture this place to be, a nondescript building, not a lot of advertisement. People go in, people go out, and that's the end of it. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Peter Gill, Precinct 5. I came also unprepared. I came to listen. But I have to say that Winthrop, and we've said it and we've heard it, and I've said it and heard it, Winthrop has a revenue problem. It doesn't have a spending problem. We live in a beautiful seaside community. I don't want to sacrifice the lifestyle of this community and sacrifice the safety of my kids, and not my kids, my grandkids, for a few dollars. This amount of money that's coming from this is not significant. We've made some wonderful progress in this community over the last few years. How? Look at the building we're in. We made this by increasing taxes. And you know what? That's not a cost. That's an investment. Look at what's happened to the property values in this town over the last 5 years. They're going up. And guess what? We're paying a little bit more taxes. It seems like a lot, but we're paying a little bit more. I don't believe that this is the right way to go. Remember his question. Did we say that Revere has passed a moratorium? Revere is not going to do this?
They banned it outright.
They banned it outright, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, they have a medical marijuana
We're not talking medical, we're talking recreational.
Recreational, they outright banned it.
I remember, sort of tongue-in-cheek, when we had a concern about our rubbish collection problem in Winthrop. And it was decided that we needed to cover the barrels because the rats were getting into them. Well, guess what? Revere started to cover the barrels. And the Revere rats got hungry. Guess where they came? If the Revere marijuana smokers want to buy marijuana, the closest place they would be able to buy it is right here, if we pass it. Do we want that? I don't. If the community is undecided, I think the community should vote no. And next year, if you change your mind, you can change your mind. This is not forever. As Carla said, we're not ready. You have 2 or 3 months to put this thing together. You're not ready. So my suggestion is that you vote no, that you vote that we do not have it. And if at some point in the future we decide that we change our mind, go ahead. But the lifestyle of this community, I've lived here not 94 years like Barbara has. She's a lot older than I am. But I was born in Winthrop Hospital, and I love this community, and I want to preserve the lifestyle of this community, and I want to preserve the safety of the kids that are growing up in this community, Carla's kids and everybody else who has kids. I know that people have the right to tell their children what to do and to guide their children. I was a parent. I still am a parent, but a little bit older. And we did that. I'm not sure that we did it perfectly, but we did it. However, I don't want to put this one more temptation of unknown in front of the kids. Somebody mentioned earlier the development of a brain. The brain gets developed sometime fully around 24 years old. This problem, I know booze contributes to it, but we're putting one more temptation, one more a way to get the stuff in front of these kids. Please, please vote no.
Hello, my name is Duncan from Precinct 1. I just want to say I support getting a dispensary in Winthrop, and I believe the key thing to understand about cannabis is a legal substance in this state. Some Winthrop residents will be buying cannabis at stores in this state and using it in their home, so voting no will do no good. We should vote yes on this. And fear-mongering, it will not help anybody.
Hi, my name's Meredith Hurley. I live at 1068 Shirley Street. I'm also the nurse here at Winthrop High School, so I know there's been a lot of conversations around the youth, and to kind of speak to that point a little bit. I also came here tonight purely just to listen, and listen to what Ms. Vitale said kind of prompted me to come up here and give you a little snapshot of what we've been doing here at the high school. Primarily, I really implore you all to take some time with this. Last year, we were totally blown away by the juuling epidemic that hit in this building, hit in the middle school. We had no idea. We didn't even know that the kids were charging their jewels with their Chromebooks, because we didn't even, I mean, I know, but we were so unprepared for the impact on our youth. It came so fast. It came so fast that they were getting the message that juuling was safe and juuling was good because it was legal and it was an alternative and it was this. We didn't have enough time to get our educational plans set. So even the education plan that would come after the revenue, we don't have enough sustenance now to start educating them. We're doing the best we can. One of the things that we rolled out last year per state law is that we sat with every 7th grade student and every 9th grade student using a vetted tool called SBIRT. It's Screening Brief Intervention Referral to Treatment. So for the 9th graders, I sat with half of them, the adjustment counselor sat with half of them, and talked with them, each and every one of them, about their current use, their past use, and what they think their potential future use would be. Pretty much to just gauge their understanding of using substances. And alcohol was a big thing, but marijuana was the one that had, number one, the most questions about, and also that everybody just thought, no big deal, it's legal. So I'm telling you that we need to do so much better about educating them now before we kind of roll it out. So if we can take a year and kind of get these protection barriers around our kids, I think it's worthwhile.
Thank you. Just one quick thing on the comment of the we can vote no, and then we can choose another year to do it type of thing. The town has a moratorium until the end of this year. The town, if it wants, so you're going to pay for an election to do this. In the event that you want to pass it again, if you think that things are in place, it will be another election. So I just want to caution that the elections aren't going to break our bank or anything like that, but it's not something that it's just like the council votes one week yes, the council votes another week no type of thing. It's not a cruise ship to turn around, but there are processes related to kind of going in one direction or another on this. Thank you.
Okay. Mark Aliberti, Precinct 5. I did come here just to kind of figure out what was going on here, what's going on, but I didn't want to speak on it. I'm going to say no. Basically, I voted no against it originally, but I want to tell you that I didn't come to this really easily. There's a lot to be considered. I got 2 teenage sons, but in 3 different departments. I started out here in Winthrop. Now I work on the Chelsea Fire Department. I got 25 years in the fire service. And like the police were talking to, somebody's got to pick up the pieces, and I'm on that crew. Especially when they made weed legal, when they decriminalized it, what was that, 5-6 years ago? Then they made it legal. It does have an effect. People want to talk about booze and weed being the same. It's really not. I have a lot of experience with myself and people with drug and alcohol problems in my family. I lost my nephew to the opioids. I lost a niece who had an accident in a car when she was imbibing. And it isn't fear-mongering, and I'm not picking anybody out. I just want to make the point that we will pay for this in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's just run volume, you have people today, and this is going to sound really weird, but these young kids today, as soon as they think it's legal and they feel like that makes it okay, you will go from 20% of the population using weed to a much higher number. And that's been proven through all kinds of different research. The other thing is, too, and this is the weird part, people just don't know how to use it. And I know that sounds really freaking strange, but I've gone on calls already working in Chelsea, and I don't speak for the city of Chelsea or the fire department either, and I certainly don't speak for the union, because I'll get in trouble. But they said, when I'm dealing with, I got 21-year-old guys who call us because they're nervous because they put too much oil in their tea, or this one kid had a dislocated finger from a Twizzler fight with his friends, all the way up to the guy with the 2 broken arms and the fractured vertebrae in his neck from riding his motorcycle high. And the other thing is, too, is with these edibles, and it's kind of been talked about here, we have people taking too many edibles. And what they'll do is they'll take it, and they won't feel anything because they're used to getting high right away, and they'll take another one. Then they'll take another one, and they'll OD on it, and then they'll drive their car or their motorcycle in the back of a dump truck like I had one time. So I look at it, and it's going to be more of a problem, and people are going to deal with it every day. My flip side to that is I got 2 sons in the vote now. One of them last year, one of his friends got some weed. He bought it illegally, and it was laced with fentanyl. And his mother went to wake him up, one of my son's classmates, and he was dead in his bed. So I understand what people are saying, kind of control it, and then you have a better idea what's going on with it and all this other stuff. But we are going to pay a price for this above and beyond revenue, and I would like to find some way to put it out and push it off further, and let those other places who are having their Apple store, weed stores, let's see how they work out. Let's see how they work with them. And then if we want to get back into it later, I understand. And by the way, I do want to thank the town manager. It's actually very helpful to have somebody with some experience in this field and actually has the answers. That really worked out good. But I'd like to say no to it just for my own personal reasons, and I think we're going to pay. That's it.
Dottie, before you speak, just a couple of things. I just want to thank everybody for coming out. It's amazing. I think there's 50-odd people here, maybe 60, and it's incredible the percentage of people that have gotten up and spoke. But I do think that my personal opinion, I'm not in favor of this, but my personal opinion is there is a moratorium that's ending in December. I think Kathleen, Carla, and Leanne spoke about possible confusion with the ballots, and we didn't have this. We had this issue not too long ago when we voted for the new Miller Field, which included on the ballot the tennis courts, and people after had a confusion with that, and we addressed it and we settled it. I think this is something that I think the town manager mentioned that if we're looking for an extension to the moratorium, we're going to have something in place. We can't just ask for it and they're going to grant it, because that's probably not going to happen. But I think it's important. I personally would urge the council to vote to put this out again in a special election for us to vote again. We can talk and talk and talk, but we need some sort of action. We either have to sit and accept it, or we have to get up and speak about it and move on. And I think it's important that we do try to have a special election, ask for a moratorium to continue for whether it be 6 months or whatever. I think we do have to continue, like Mr. Carroll said, to have a plan in case it does happen, because we talked about the education in the schools and how we talked about the vaping and everything else. And the fact is that this has been almost 2 years now, and we're still not ready, obviously not ready. So I think it is important that we continue on the path, if it is going to happen, that we are prepared for it and that we make it as best as possible. But I do think it's important that the council vote to have a special election to let the citizens vote again. Thank you.
Thank you. You read my mind, because my question was going to be, how do we as a community help the council and the manager? Welcome. How do we help and support in the way of obtaining the proper type of caption for the signatures? What do we do to support the committee, the council, yourself, so that we can take the advice of our town clerk? I suggested, and I had a chance to speak with her briefly after her good presentation tonight. When I went on the website for the Winthrop to do with this subject matter, I got Cohasset, I got zoning for Situate, I got all of the page after page came out of my computer. There are communities that are in the same boat as we are. And I think, in fairness to recreational marijuana, we bring that question to the town. I myself voted yes, thinking it was for the state. So how do we as a community support the council in obtaining proper signatures and taking the proper route so that we can present to the state, okay, that we would like to question this, and we would like to put this out to the community once again.
Thank you. Just so everyone's clear, this was state language concerning the initial vote on this, and the official title of the act was an act concerning the regulation and taxation of marijuana. And there was a description concerning, specifically, a yes vote would allow persons 21 and older to possess, use, and transfer marijuana and products containing marijuana concentrate, including edible products, and to cultivate marijuana all in limited amounts, and would provide for the regulation and taxation of commercial sale of marijuana and marijuana products. So that was what is on the ballot. Concerning a signature drive and a ballot measure going forward concerning the ban of it, I think it would be something along the nature of a ballot question concerning the outright ban on the regulation and taxation and commercial sale of marijuana and marijuana products within Winthrop.
Those petitions, Carla, is Carla, you still there? Sure. While he's just reading the highlights there, for future reference, petitions are on our website with a brief explanation of what type of petition you need, and then, of course, the calculations, if you were need the signatures from the last election, would have to be calculated by the town clerk's office. So if you need help, you can go to the office. Carla and her staff will help you, or you can go to our website, and petitions and information about petitions are on the website. On the clerk's division and department, right on her website, you'll see the petition information.
Thank you, Chief. And then I guess just to read the exact regulations concerning what the situation we're in. If a municipality voted in favor of question 4 on November 8th, 2016, i.e. a majority of voters casting ballots voted yes on the question, then 2 votes must be taken before an ordinance or bylaw can be effective. 1, it must be approved by the voters by ballot at an annual or special election. And 2, the ordinance or bylaw must be approved by the local legislative body. So, ballot, local body, if you want to vote no on it. I have to get back on you on the how many. I think it was a high number. I want to say it's around like 10% of registered voters. It's kind of a crazy thing, but that's something that I would want the town clerk to confirm with the AG and Secretary of State's office, just to confirm. Thank you.
Hi, Andrew Guilfoyle, Precinct 6. So I understand the most important thing right now, do we have a plan already developed, at least in a rough draft, in case we don't shut it down? Shut down the marijuana?
No, but we have the guidelines in place of how we could make the changes to our zoning and set up a local licensing scheme that could be enacted within the time before the moratorium is lifted.
Okay, and we have a track on developing a plan in case for when the moratorium expires. That's really the issue that's more important than anything.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get we'll have our ducks in a row for it. If an industrious person comes along and wants to open a recreational retail facility, we will have in place the steps necessary to conform with local licensing in accordance with the state regulations.
All right, so there's a timetable pre-established right now.
It still has to be worked out, specifics on it, but I mean we have a timetable that backtracks from the date of the moratorium ending to now, when we need to make the decisions over the next 3.5 months.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello again. Guy Brandestein, Precinct 6. There were a couple things that were brought up that, I'll be honest, I had to bite my tongue to keep from giggling. One was the contradiction. There is a political party out there that says that it's nearly impossible to get an ID. I mean, it takes an act of God for somebody to get an ID whenever the subject is brought up in regards to voting. But the town manager lets us know that anybody can get an ID, no problem at all. So I guess one of them is right, one of them is wrong. Which one? I'm not going to guess. As far as the revenue issue, as I brought up at the budget meeting, it's difficult to take the Peter Pauper language seriously when the town is floating, literally, that ferry that so far hasn't made a profit. In fact, so far hasn't broken even. And How much of that is supported by the state? How much of that is supported by the state? Because up to the beginning of the year, it was $500,000 in the red. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's going to offset one of the last 4 years. So okay, we're 400,000 in the red. And then the tennis court that was not planned, but the previous permanent town manager started to build, then went to the town council to get approved. $500,000 right away. I wish I had that money tree. I'll be honest, I really do wish I had that money tree, because I could really use it. And the small tax increase to pay for this, 25% is not considered small in my budget. And that's how much my taxes went up. 25%. My property taxes are now higher than my mortgage. Kind of backwards. And then you throw on top of that the rather insane increase in our water sewer rate that we recently had. I would love to have some of my money for me to spend. It'd be nice. And as far as the security for this shop, are they going to be providing their own, or is that going to be provided by Winthrop Police?
Again, I think that's all part of the MOU with the host community. And of course, my union will be very strong advocates for protecting their work. And we don't have security companies locally, usually to enforce local laws or ordinances.
No, I hope it's better than the one we got with Deer Island, because I see those trucks full of chemicals go by without police escorts.
Yeah, I understand that, but we're talking about marijuana, so I wish I had your problem, guy. I wish my taxes were higher than my mortgage too. By the way, I caught that one.
I'm talking about hydrochloric acid. I think that's a little stronger than marijuana.
I guess to kind of hit your concerns in order, in terms of your first question concerning how easy is it to get an ID, did I read that correctly?
Because there is a contradiction. We've been told for many years that it's very difficult to get an ID whenever the voter ID question's been brought up.
That is fine. This isn't dealing with voting. This is dealing with the purchase of a substance.
It's dealing with ID.
Same thing that people would need to buy alcohol or tobacco. That's what we'd be looking to have in place. So I guess your issue would pertain to those substances as well, and the necessity for an ID for them.
No, actually, you just reinforced my argument. That the argument that it's so difficult to get an ID for voting is a bunch of hot air.
Okay, that's
the same ID could be
that's a
used
discussion
for
for a different day, I guess. I guess we can agree to disagree on that one. I have my own thoughts. Concerning the money, you seem like you've gone through the budget multiple times. There's a budget and there's a capital plan. This community hasn't done a great job of capital planning for the long term. They have dealt with a budget, and this money being in the general fund would be dealing with the operating budget. You've talked about a good deal of capital items that, like a school, that was a ballot question. So the community voted on that to increase its taxes together. Things like that are seen as community goods. So when you take $500,000, believe me, $500,000 would be life-changing for me right now. I'm in the process of buying a house right now, and it would be a huge help. But that said, when you take $500,000 and extrapolate it across 20,000 people, it's not as much money. And when you look at the things that a community kind of takes on and they vote on together, these aren't things that the government imposed on people. These are things that the community came together and voted on. They voted for a debt exclusion and tax override to pay for a school like this and for the teachers to go into a school like this. In terms of the water rates, your water system is close to failure, and the increase in the rates is necessary to fix the infrastructure that has long been mistreated in this community. So those are large infrastructure projects. In terms of this is a significantly smaller amount of money. And like I said, this money isn't fixing all of the roads. It's not plowing our streets during the winter. It's not going to build a new school for us. It's not going to solve Miller Field. It's not going to make Logan Airport move. It's not going to give us a whole new police station or anything like that. Think smaller is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And then in terms of security, no, our police department will not be providing security for them. What they will be doing is interfacing concerning security plans. So similar to what they do with other government organizations, they work with Massport concerning security near the airport. They work with the Metro Boston, UASI, and things like that to provide mutual aid. This will be a similar situation that there will be plans and best practices that the business has in place that they're trying to share with our local police department. So if a bar opens, we don't really know what's going on in terms of their security. When they kick someone out, what happens? When someone's overserved, what do they really do? We don't really know. But with this place, we actually have a security plan in place that we would actually be knowledgeable of and be able to interface with and set our police department up to be as effective as possible. So I know you've been kind of throwing some questions out there and things like that, but I want to make sure that you feel confident in that your questions are being addressed and you have been heard in this forum, and that we're really looking to just, if you're a no, you're a no, and that's fine. Everyone here can be a no if they want to, or everyone here can be a yes. Your opinion's been heard, but kind of some of the circular logic and bringing up some of the different things isn't really beneficial to this conversation, because this community has a serious decision to make concerning the future of what they're doing and the nature of how they want to move forward. So I get that there's other impacts from other things and stuff like that, and we can talk about those offline. We're bringing Massport back to the table. We're talking to MWRA. I'm trying to do all the things you guys are looking for, but this is, let's kind of keep on point and stick with the marijuana issue, and if the community wants to ban it or not.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm not quite done. I do want to correct one thing that you mentioned about the water sewer infrastructure. Your predecessor, what was it, 6 years ago? I asked him what the status of the water sewer system was, because I was the one behind getting the refund from the MWRA. And I studied the whole system, including the interest-free loans. And he told me that we were nearly complete a number of years ago. So there's a discrepancy there. And
I was before my time here,
I
and
agree.
the information that you had
if you
was
had let
wrong.
me finish,
It's wrong.
If you had let me finish,
okay.
then perhaps maybe I should come down to town hall and find out where he was wrong. Because if he was wrong on that, what else with our budget over the tenure that he was here was he wrong on? And should he be brought to task for it?
I will be more than happy to discuss any budget and finance related matters with you. There's nothing we can do about a previous manager. We can't take them to task or anything like that. I can't call them back in and have our police department arrest them or something like that.
No, but the town can claw back his pension to pay for
but
his mistakes.
again, sir, this marijuana.
I'm Helen Tedisco, Precinct 5. I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who shared their private and personal stories. They had a lot of courage to do that, and I wanted to thank them, and I'm sure everybody else feels the same way. This has been a very interesting exercise as far as I'm concerned about democracy. And I am proud to be here, whether what side you're on, we're talking together, and we're trying to resolve a problem. I want to say to the town manager, you said one way or the other, you'll balance the budget. Thank you. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments.
Welcome to the party, town manager. Just one last question, Rob DiMarco, Precinct 6. And one more time to reiterate, I think it's probably the fifth time. So if we were to vote no, it would have to be a town-wide vote and then followed by a town council vote. Is that correct?
You got it.
So, that being said, I think the million-dollar question is if we go through all this and we vote no, or if we vote yes, will the town council respect the will of the people and vote in line with what we decide?
I will. I can tell you right now. Anybody else wish to be heard? Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard as far as the council? I know you got this microphone. Mr. Boncory is going to answer your question.
I'll give you an opinion. First of all, I wasn't going to say a word tonight about anything because I wanted to hear what everybody thought about putting a dispensary in Winthrop, because that's the only question before us. Whether you like marijuana or you don't like marijuana, that's not the issue. The issue is, should we put a dispensary in Winthrop? I don't condone marijuana smoking, nor do I smoke marijuana. But in the past 4 years, I have represented 2 medical marijuana companies that have been putting medical marijuana places in Holyoke, Rockland, Auburn, Orange, and different towns. And I have studied all of the different zoning bylaws in all of those towns and probably 60 or 70 other towns. So I'm very familiar with the situation with the marijuana law. I have it right here in front of me, and as to what we can and we can't do. We put a moratorium up until December. If we don't do something to either extend that, and if we do extend it, it's only going to get extended maximum until March. If we don't do anything, anybody can come in here January 1st and open up their own dispensary. And we don't want that. What we do need to do is send this to the planning board and put a bylaw together regulating any local dispensary that wishes to come to Winthrop. But right now, nobody cares about coming to Winthrop. Winthrop's not big enough. There are only 13 medical marijuana establishments open in the state right now. There are no recreational places open in the state. So all the statistics of what people are doing in the state hasn't happened because they're not open. One has been approved, but none have been opened. So there's no place right now to get marijuana for recreational use in the state at all, except on the black market. And people are getting it on the black market, which is the worst thing possible. As Kathleen said, her kids said to her, kids are doing marijuana in Winthrop now. Where are they getting it? They're getting it on the black market, and you don't know what's in it. It could be fentanyl, it could be spiked with anything in the world. But if you have a legitimate marijuana place, the regulations right here, where everything has to be tested, everything has to have security around the place, it has to be tested for how much THC, it has to be packaged, it has to be labeled, not to be touched by children. It has to be labeled as to the dangers of it, and it has to be sold in quantities in a licensed store. And you have to show an ID to get it. It should never be in children's hands. And it says on the marijuana that's packaged, not for children, keep away from children on every package. That's the state law. We are much better off having dispensaries than the black market. I personally, if you asked, would vote to get a dispensary. And guess what? A dispensary. You people, I heard people talking about dispensaries all over town. We can only get one. In our town, we can only get one. There's no influx of anybody even looking to get that one now. Nobody is trying to come into Winthrop and open one. So we're making a lot of issue tonight about something that isn't happening and can happen for at least a year or two, because that's what the licensing process takes. Even to get the medical marijuana companies that I've been working with up in those other towns, it's taken 2 years, and they're not open. They're built, but they're not open. So nothing is going to happen tomorrow in Winthrop. Nothing at all can happen in Winthrop. But someone could come in January 1st, if we don't have a bylaw, and try to start in Winthrop. And we shouldn't allow that. We should definitely not allow that. Okay, we should be doing what should be done is going to the planning board, filing a bylaw that will control it. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard?
So I guess the question was whether or not we would reverse the will of the voters if it was put up to vote. Personally, I think that what we're thinking about is, I think that the impact that this could have on Winthrop is actually pretty small in the grand scheme of things, because if we look at it, the state has already allowed legalization of marijuana. So essentially what we're saying is that in a 1.5 square mile plot of land within the state, there are not going to be dispensaries that are going to be open. These dispensaries are going to be open, on Saratoga Street, and they're going to be open in East Boston. They are going to be open in Lynn. And so I think, I know, it's easy to get liquor for kids into town from East Boston now, just as easy as it is in Winthrop, I guess. But at the end of the day, I think that, if there could be some revenue that could be seen of it, and there's a very small probability that of any change that we'd see in Winthrop, just because I think we need to look at it geographically. There's a very small percent, we're really only restricting it in a very small area. It's easy to cross town lines. Then I think we should look at it that way. But the short answer to your question, Mr. Dowd, is absolutely not. I believe in representative democracy more than I believe in legalizing marijuana in Winthrop, and I would not vote to reverse the will of the voters. So thank you.
Anybody else?
President, can I just clarify one thing?
Certainly.
There's been a lot said tonight about the alcohol establishments within the town of Winthrop. I just want to not leave the impression that these alcohol establishments are unchecked or non-responsible. All of our alcohol establishments are checked multiple times a year. We have youth from other jurisdictions that come in to try to buy in our liquor establishments and bars in Winthrop. And ironically, I think in the last 3 years we had one failure. So by the majority of standards, we have great success in responsible ownership of alcohol establishments. I just want to make sure everyone's clear with that, because there was a lot said earlier about alcohol can be bought at any time. We do check them, we do control them, and we do try to do things with other juveniles from other jurisdictions so they know they're not from Winthrop. And we lend our youth out to the other jurisdictions as well. So I just want to leave that we do have responsible business owners at the liquor stores, as well as majority of our bars here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to thank everybody that participated tonight in this important forum. And the key thing here, this was a forum tonight. This wasn't a public hearing, or this wasn't a meeting held at the Harvey hearing room where you just had an opportunity to talk, to make a statement. And the whole idea to have a forum was to have this crosstalk, get the answers. And our new town manager, thank you so much for doing an excellent job in answering all of the questions tonight. So the important thing is to protect the town of Winthrop. So we forge ahead, get the planning board to put together a document so that we can protect ourselves no matter where we are in the scheme of things as of January 1st. And again, thank you to everybody that participated, and good night.